Welcome to Life is for Living. I'm your host, Kylee Buckley, and I'm here with David from the School of Living Wisdom. Today, David, let's talk about listening to our body, what it's telling us of things.
Immediately, I recall a student challenging me after lecturing on listening to your body. He said, he was a young fella and very fit. He said, "I'm going for a run. You want to come with me?" And my first response was, "I'm too busy." And he said, "Are you still listening to your body? We want to make sure you practice what you preach." So he cornered me really, and I relented and said, "All right, let's go for a run." Now, I was fairly strong and fairly fit, being a gardener and very active. But I got the shock of my life when I realized that we only ran round the block really, and I got the shock of my life, Kylee, when I realized I could not finish that run. I had to walk, and I thought, I am losing the ability to run, and I'm only 62 years old. I am not ready to lose the ability to run, and I have not been listening to my body to the degree that I thought I was. I was reasonably fit. I had a good, strong heartbeat. I got checkups every 2 years from the medics, and I felt that I was being a good steward of my body, a good caretaker of God's property. But when I realized that I could no longer even run round the block, I decided that I wasn't comfortable to lose the ability to run even at 62. So I decided that I would make the time every day to go for a run round the block. And it was pleasurable, and it fed my need for progress when I discovered that after a week I could run all the way around the block, and only took 24 hours to recover. By the end of that week, I was sold on it. So I began doing a 5 kilometre block, and that took a bit more out of me. But, a fortnight later, I could achieve that. And then I wondered if I could do 10 kilometres and back again. So my big challenge to myself, I live in Stoke, Nelson, and I decided I would run all the way to Richmond and back. And that seemed like a very long way at the time. But when I managed to accomplish that, I thought, well, why stop at 10 kilometres? Let's go for a 20. Now, all this time, I'm just checking my tendons, my muscles, my ligaments, my legs, my shins. I didn't want to get shin splints. I don't want to have a heart attack. So I did go back to the doctor just for a full checkup to make sure that I was really up for this running craze, because quite a few people, when they're overweight and 50, they're going to blow up if they decide suddenly that they're going to get fit. And they end up with a heart attack on the squash court or a heart attack while out running. And that's the finish of them, because they didn't build up slowly. Some of the plaque in their arteries gave away, and the next thing, there is a ischemia and they're dead. This happens pretty frequently for people who take on the sort of things they used to do as a young person and discover pretty quickly that their body won't stand it. So I built up fairly gradually until finally I took on a half marathon, and that went all right. So I decided that I was okay for a marathon. So I went from not being able to run around a 3 kilometre block to doing marathons in about 12 months, which is probably about the right time frame. And then from there, my athletic career took off, with the result that now I hold records on the track for New Zealand, my age group, Masters. And I've also got prizes for the oldest long distance mountain runner in the country. And I really enjoy running. But when I take young athletes out for a run, I insist that after they've been running for 5 minutes, they come to a complete stop and they just listen to their body, what it's doing. Is there any palpitations or arrhythmia in the heart? Is there any breathlessness? Is there any aching joints or muscles? Because as one doctor said to me, he said, the key is to train, do not strain. And I find that a lot of runners my age, they actually overstrain and they do themselves a permanent injury. And so you'll find that a lot of men and women my age have crook knees due to abusing themselves or playing rugby as youth. It was interesting when I attended a class reunion, I discovered that the athletic stars of my boyhood were now lame and crippled or dead because they really had knocked themselves around with boxing or rugby or various overdoing it. And as a result, they were not athletic anymore. Whereas I, who had only played tennis as a teenager, to the taunts of my friends, what are you, a girl? Where's your rugby? Uh, I'm glad I resisted that peer pressure because it meant that I never damaged my body.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to get back. And what really blew me away, Kylie, and you can call me a skite if you like, I don't mind, but I'm fitter and faster now as
Mm,
a 70-year-old than I was at 25.
amazing.
I know that because I remember timing myself over a mile as a young man, and I can do that time now quite easily. So there's a lot to be said for listening to your body. Uh, I listen to my body when I've had too much sugar. I listen to my body when I've eaten too much pork. I listen to my body when I get a sore throat. And I do something about it immediately. As a result, I haven't had any sickness or disease to speak of, apart from a dose of dysentery in Africa a month back from forgetting that I was drinking tap water. And it's just a habit, and it was only half a glass, but I paid for that. Uh, but yeah, I do take my body. This is what I'm listening for. I'm listening for repeated headaches. They deserve attention straight away. I'm listening for breathlessness after climbing stairs. That's a sign that your oxygen levels are in trouble. If you can, learn to measure your VO2 max with a sports watch, because that's actually the best indicator of how fit you really are.
Mm.
But if you're as a constant cough, you've got a virus or a bacteria living in your throat and in your esophagus. You must learn to practice esophageal hygiene. I have a tongue scraper. I have betadine for gargling and a mouthwash. As a result, I get rid of a throat infection or a cough in 60 minutes, and it happens every time. So I'm a big fan of betadine gargle and mouthwash. I'm a big fan of oral hygiene. I'm a big fan of daily exercise, whether it be a power walk, a swim, or a run. I'm a big fan of measuring my heartbeat and my blood pressure. I know what my heartbeat is all the time. I know my blood pressure all the time. Nothing I can do about tinnitus now. The days when I could have prevented that are long gone. I didn't have the earplugs and the earmuffs that I should have had with a mowing contract and a chainsawing contract. So I'm still paying for the results of not listening to that ringing in my ears that became more and more continuous after abusing myself with loud machinery. And today, with power machinery, men need to use chaps for their legs when they're on a power saw or a chainsaw. They need to have eye protection, ear protection, hand protection. Never before have men and women needed more clothing protection than in the days of the high-powered portable power tools that we are currently using. And I mean, those 9-inch skill saws develop such torque that they're absolutely demonic. And if you lose the grip on one, you're going to have a serious accident immediately. So that's when I try and think ahead. And I've discovered that thinking ahead is the best protection my body can possibly have. And I see people who don't think ahead when they don't put on a seat belt or they don't bother with cars with the security balloons. I see people who don't think ahead when they're taking risks on motorbikes and on quad bikes and on trikes. I see people not thinking ahead when they're using a table saw. And, it just takes an instant to take a finger or a hand off.
Mm-hmm.
And it always happens as a result of not thinking ahead. So the brain is really the only protection the body's got, Kylie, and if we don't use it to protect
True.
ourselves, we are going to end up falling off a ladder or cutting and injuring ourselves, and even stepping out onto the patio or the driveway or the footpath in icy conditions. You could easily break your tailbone or cripple
Mm.
yourself.
Yes, you can.
And having a stroke is the natural result of high blood pressure and plaque in your arteries. I just think that wisdom comes when you begin to listen to your body.
Mm. And getting rid of stress, the nervous system, that's really important too, because a lot of things can come from that.
Oh, you're onto it. For example, the whole nervous system records that the brain is unhappy or anxious or frightened, and it records stress. Stress is always rooted in a fear that you've never addressed. So it could be the fear of letting somebody down, it could be the fear of running late, it could be the fear of going broke, going bust, going bankrupt, or it could be the fear of having a child reject you or a spouse reject you. But living in fear induces hormonal secretions into your blood, such as adrenaline. And did you know that adrenaline is highly toxic to the body, Kylie? And
Mm.
therefore, if you're living in constant anxiety, you're actually poisoning yourself. And
You're
the
right.
autoimmune system sets up all sorts of inflammations in the body because it's registering that the brain is unhappy, there's something wrong in the nervous system, there's something wrong in the body, and the autoimmune system starts racing around trying to find the enemy. And the next
True.
thing
That's
is
true.
there's something ending with itis because all autoimmune conditions and inflammatory conditions end with itis. And that's often the result of stress and
Yeah,
the result of fear and the result of an overstimulated nervous system.
that's true. And it can take years to heal because that was my story and it took years. But
Well, the sooner you deal with all anxiety and all fear and all adrenal fatigue, the better you're off
yeah,
because the body is keeping score the whole time
yeah.
and the body is quite capable of poisoning itself.
It is. It is. Yes. Yes. Well, that was years ago now, and I've been healed, I don't know, 10
Well,
years now.
for what it's worth, you look like the picture of health to me, but I don't know your blood pressure, your heartbeat, or your VO2 max. But
I'm
I'm
all
a big
good.
I'm a big believer in VO2 max because it shows the lungs' ability to take up oxygen and how quickly they can do it. And if you ever get seriously ill, VO2 max will determine whether you live or die. Uh,
Right.
yeah. So I try and keep mine up pretty high. According to my sports watch, I've got the VO2 max of a 30-year-old. Well, I'm content with that.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, thank you, David, for another excellent session on our health, guys. It's important to look after it.
Yep, you have been warned.
Yeah. Thanks, David.
Thank
Bye for
you.
now.
Thank you.